I've said all along that I think that this isn't an emotional decision for PIF. It isn't, a lot of people have sort of said and gone back and forth and said they won't allow Liverpool to, have their pants down, that kind of thing. It's been very much all emotional language of kind of PIF will make a stand. I don't believe that. I believe that they are all about business. If they believe that there's a business case for selling him and thinking that, with 3 years left on his contract, this is the maximum amount that we can get for him, they will sell him at that point. It doesn't matter whether it's Liverpool, whether it was, anybody else. I think that they will think, this is how we run the football club. It gives us this PSR value, but they have to hit that valuation. And the other thing that people kind of aren't really talking about is that Real Sociedad also have a quite big sell-on clause of about 10%. So it isn't all going to go to Newcastle. So there's a lot of work to be done, I think, around the structure of the deal, around the fee as well. And that's why I think Liverpool maybe have to get a bit of a wriggle on in terms of actually making that bid. It would not surprise me, although it's been denied to me recently, it would not surprise me if there has been some dialogue and some back channel chatter around this, because Newcastle need to get their ducks in a row. But, it would all be unofficial. It would all be through intermediaries, maybe through second and third parties. But it wouldn't surprise me if we had already got to that point, because these things happen in football. We've seen it this summer. I've been chatting to everybody, and there's been so many not for sale stances this summer. And where are they all going to stand? I think I tweeted about it yesterday and said, I've heard the words not for sale so many times this summer. And they inevitably can't all, if they all stood, it would be that nothing was going to happen before Monday. Well, I think that's entirely unlikely. I just don't think that could possibly happen. Yeah. So one not for sale stance is going to fall, probably two. So we will see. But they've got, that's the top and bottom of it, is that they have to come to a fee agreement. And I think they are quite far apart at the moment on valuations. But we see that so many times in the Premier League where clubs come into it for very different points. And at the end of the day, are Liverpool going to move their dial a little bit to get an elite player? Look, it's a big deal for them. He's an elite player. Like, I've seen him play, and he is very, very good. And they have data. The way that Liverpool operate, they have that data, that tells them, and they are very, very good on it, that tells them the players that are suited for the kind of game that they want to play. And if the data is telling them that Isak is the ideal player, he's the one they're going to go. They're not going to go and sign. I know it's been mentioned, Nicholas Jackson. Are they going to go and sign Nicholas Jackson for what is a 10 million loan fee and a 20 million penalty if they don't sign him at the end? So that's 30 million down, as opposed to spending an extra 10 million on Isak above the valuation. I think compromise always happens in these deals. So I think Newcastle will come down and I think Liverpool will go up. That's my feeling at this point. But I've done other interviews and I've spoken to other people, and I've kind of couch it as it can change really, really quickly. It's where I feel we are at the moment, but it can change really, really quickly. And I'm prepared for Isak to be a Liverpool player by Monday night, and I'm prepared for Newcastle to get two players in and start the PR job of kind of justifying why they've sold him at some point. So I think that's where we're on Monday.
Yeah, it will be that, won't it? But you're right to mention the fact that time is running out on this from a Liverpool point of view as well. And just finally, you've kind of summed it up there, but I will just ask you anyway. It feels as though, and you rightly caveat this by saying there is still time for a twist and both eventualities are still wholly on the table. Liverpool wouldn't have been at the table for so long for this player if they weren't absolutely desperate to make him a Liverpool player, if it's fair to say. But it feels like now, from everything you've said, Mark, it's more likely than ever before that Alexander Isak does become a Liverpool player.
Yeah, if you'd have asked me that question 7 days ago, I would have said something really different. So I think it's always worth kind of couching it that way. And, we're in a kind of world, aren't we, where everybody wants the kind of definitive, he is going to be a Liverpool player. And I actually don't think that even the key players in the saga could necessarily give you a definitive. I think, Eddie Howe said today, and I don't think he's bluffing. He said, he genuinely doesn't know what's going to happen. It's out of his control. So I think But I think if I was going to do odds, I think I'd just said this time last week 60-40 that he was going to stay because of Newcastle's difficulties signing a player. I think we've moved towards 70-30 that he goes to Liverpool, or maybe even higher than that, to be honest, at this stage. But like everything, there's still that chunk, and I think that the kind of every side is kind of urging you to be cautious before making a definitive statement about whether he goes or not. But if you ask me right now, given all the information that I have from both sides and maybe the players' side as well, and maybe the mood music around everything, I would say I would pitch it around there 70-30 that he goes, with a capacity for, there's games at the weekend, isn't there? And if you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, Newcastle lost two absolutely key players at the weekend on Monday, so that could scramble you into something else. But I feel like, for me, as a kind of fairly neutral observer, because obviously I'm not a Newcastle fan, so I'm not invested emotionally in this. I think it makes sense in a lot of ways, because it's such a difficult job to reintegrate him when he's burned so many bridges. And I think there's a good portion of the Newcastle fans now who will not have him back because of the disrespect that he's shown the fan base. There's a good portion of Newcastle fans. People say, well, he scores a goal and he gets them back on side. Yes, potentially, but that first time, let's say he comes on as a substitute, how many of the crowd are going to be booing one of their own players? These are all considerations, and it just becomes this massive thing that's weighing down over the whole season. And you've already seen that that's happened over the first two games. They chanted a very small proportion, but fans are chanting about him being a greedy bastard. That feels toxic and untenable, and you can pull it back. Of course you can. These things happen. Virgil van Dijk went back to playing for Southampton after he kind of sat out the first few games, but I don't think anybody's ever spent a month training alone, not played the first three games, because he's not going to play tomorrow either. To me, that feels like it's Pierre van Hooijdonk, isn't it?
Yeah,
but it's better player than Pierre van Hooijdonk.
Yeah.
What do you do? It has to come at some point where you take a decision, and if you've got a willing buyer and you've got other players in, that's where my 70-30 comes from. But I wouldn't rule out that we're kind of talking about him still being here, and we revisit this conversation in October, November. I wouldn't rule it out, but I'd say it's unlikely now.
Yeah, we just need a resolution one way or the other. Hopefully, from my perspective, obviously with Isak wearing red come Monday night, but let's wait and see. Mark, thank you so much for your time once again. Massively appreciated. Everybody else, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Take care. I'll see you soon. That was a clip from Transfer Insight. To check out the whole show, head to redmenplus.com or click the link in the description.